Well, Eric, getting things kicked off here this week. I know we typically start with kind of that near-term forecast, and of course, we're going to get into that, especially as, more storms are expected across a large portion of the U.S. However, we're still identifying key areas that have been missing out on much needed precipitation
Yeah.
and could continue to miss out on some of these areas. But you mentioned that you want to talk about kind of the impacts of El Nino here moving forward, because I mean, in my job, when we're talking a lot about markets and weather impacting markets, we just keep hearing about, how El Nino this year just seems it's going to be amplified, kind
Yeah.
of drawing some interesting things going on here with ocean temperatures. Kind of talk about what you're seeing and how we're kind of going to relay that into, these longer term forecasts, especially as we get through this planting season and the summer growing season.
Okay. So look at this map for just a second here, and I want you to see what's going on. Just a quick reminder, okay? When you're looking at what an El Nino is, El Ninos are when the trade winds, which typically blow in this direction, they weaken, stop, or reverse. So it's a change in the global pressure patterns across the equator, all right? Mainly in the Indian and Pacific Ocean. All right. This is what we call a westerly wind burst. The winds are supposed to be, or typically are going out of the east. Well, this is going in the reverse direction. And it kicked up this massive typhoon on the northern side. Remember a couple weeks ago, we were saying, hey, this could happen with these big westerly wind bursts. Well, I mean, it was huge. It's a super typhoon, powerful, powerful, typhoon ripping through the West Pacific on all that warm water that's sloshing back. All right, I bring all that up because we need to land here. And I'm going to spend a minute on this, Dawson, because I think this is critical. There's a ton of hype over this El Nino. Would you agree? Like everybody's talking about it all the time. And I want to remind you of something that's critical about El Nino events when you're predicting them in April or March or just spring when you're trying to say, well, what's summer going to be? Okay. There is a very, very well documented and well understood thing in atmospheric sciences called the spring forecast barrier. And it is our historical evidence that our weather forecast models, when using the data coming in spring to predict summer and fall and winter, the upcoming seasons, there's a lot of unreliability with it. And it's because the atmosphere in the northern hemisphere in spring is overturning. There's a lot of change. And so we don't often rely on those predictions. Well, what do we have changing right now? There's a whole lot of warm water here. There's warm water surfacing in here. Here's the warm water which that typhoon is born in sloshing back. And we've lost this La Nina at record speed. And models like this is published by Ben Knoll, an outstanding meteorologist, really, really great guy. He went into the UK, excuse me, he went into the ECMWF data and extracted 10 different models to see how strong of an El Nino it's going to be. And if you look, 8 of the 10 come from Meteo France all the way up to the Bureau of Meteorology, that's of Australia. 8 of the 10 are predicting not just a strong El Nino, but El Nino with the central Pacific Ocean temperature over 2 degrees or just at 2 degrees Celsius. Now that may not seem like a lot, but this is kind of in rare air. I mean, if we get up here where the European model and above are predicting, we are in what we would call super Nino territory. They're going, great. Well, what the heck does that mean? And this is the thing, man. Like everything that you're going to hear about it is going to be speculative. We're going to use models and we're going to use analogs. And the reality is none of them are going to give you the truth just yet. So I'm going to show you what I think we could be seeing here. All right. One, be prepared for people to just start widely sharing seasonal precipitation forecasts. This is one that a lot of folks that have a narrative that they would like to tell you, whether it's true or false, they'll use it. It's called the CFS model. Now, it's the climate forecasting system model built by NOAA decades ago. This is an old model that is just continued to run, but is not updated. And look what it's trying to do May, June, July. I mean, right now, where's the epicenter of drought? Nebraska. And like, you know what, Nebraska? Here's an extra foot of rain, May, June, July. Have good luck. Break, and so we all look at this going, okay, well, all right, CFS is out there. People are going to toss it around. People are going to wonder if it's right. And I just want to remind you of something. These are all of the major models I like to use. My favorite, and I have a favorite statistically. It's not like I do anything for the ECMW. It's just statistically they're better. It's upper left. I mean, look, it's wet. It's not giving an extra foot of rain in the months of May, June, July, but it's wetter in the plains. Now go to the upper right. That's the National Multi-Model Ensemble. That's a bunch of models run in North America. May, June, July, they're drier in the Corn Belt. They're drier eastern Kansas, Missouri, St. Louis, which is right now the area that's under the gun for precipitation. So I bet you there's people there like, yeah, bring it on. Let's dry this thing back out again. Look at our government, bottom left. Doesn't look anything like the top two. In fact, it's trying to break the drought in the southeast, which is one of the worst droughts in recorded history in the southeast. And then I just made the graphic here in the bottom right. It's from the UK Met Office. And the British are like, you know what? We think that once we get into May, June, July, central US is going to light up, just going to go. And yeah, you could draw some conclusions between the UK Met and ECMWF, but I'm just trying to make a point here that we're all going to be stabbing at this and we're going to miss it. We're all going to miss it. And you say, when are you going to get it right? Come back in a month from now, May 15th. Then I think our predictions are much closer. So these next 4 weeks are going to be critical for us, Dawson. I do know this. Let's come back to what we, kind of can know and understand. Before I turn it back over to you, I want to just put this out there. Where we're starting from is critical because in the month of March and into early April, brutally cold air set up in Alaska. And most models want to flip that. They want to make it hot there in summer. And if it's hot in Alaska in summer, guess where it's not hot? Des Moines, Champaign, these areas in the midsection of the United States. But this, by the way, gave us these statistics. Right now, there are, 11 states that just set new record high March temperatures, including California, of course. And California was also, compared to its historical data, the driest March it's ever had. No miracle March out there. Meanwhile, super wet in the Great Lakes, drought building in the plains, drought building in the southeast. And everyone's like, well, this is 2012. Well, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. It's not 2012. Did 2012 have drought and heat in March? Sure. But the ocean temperatures were entirely different. We were not predicting a mega El Nino for that summer. So 12 is off the list. And I was telling a friend this morning. I don't know where this phrase comes from, Dawson, but my grandma says it all the time. She'd always say, well, there's more than one way to skin a cat. You can get drought lots of different ways. But 12 is not the year that you want to go saying, oh, this is exactly like that year. So, Dawson, that's just some comments I wanted to make at the outset here, just given stuff that I'm hearing a lot of folks talk about. And I want to be just transparent. You will have meteorologists swinging for the fences, and they're going to put their stamp on something and say, this is what's going to happen. And someone may get it right. It'll be an accident, but they'll get it right. Most, if they get it wrong, will hope you forgot. And I think that's the way it's going to go. So I'm just trying to be transparent with you that these kind of things we see out there beyond, May, June, July, August, September, it's speculation at best. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's to just kind of think that far out. We've been doing that for a while.
Forever,
We've
man.
been we've been pulling these summer forecasts out of the dark from since February, since even maybe earlier this winter as well. And so it's just interesting to talk about how even just this close to that time period, there's still so many wild cards out there for how we can kind of predict how things are going to go. Can we pull that back in kind of a little bit more closer to, because many folks are probably just wondering, is it going to rain tomorrow? Is it going to rain, this week in general? Because I mean, last week we got our first crop progress report. We're continuing to get reports of planting going on in key states. Obviously, the Midwest is not in full swing yet, but we're still thinking about that, getting some moisture back into the soil. That's getting ahead in preparation for this time. And so, what could the near term look like? And are there any places that are still missing out on some key moisture?
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, you see this California was so dry, but over the weekend had a big low come into California. Now, it's early April. They would rather had this a month ago, but there was moisture. And then you also notice this corridor. And don't forget up here, we've got snow melt. Well, it's a big circle, but up here we got some snow melting, which is what's increasing our flooding threat in addition to the recent rains. That's why there's flood watches out for parts of Michigan and Wisconsin. But there's no doubt about it. This is all heat risk and wildfire risk, and all of this is red flag warning. It's those same areas that have been under the gun for very dry conditions for a while. The soil moisture is really low. The ranks on precipitation are just in the basement in some of those areas. And meanwhile, I've got nearly all of Michigan having its wettest March into early April on record. And it just shows you that narrow focus corridor that's been made by this. There it is. This is the Bermuda High right there. Now, the Bermuda High is just too far to the west. I mean, Bermuda's here. I'd rather have this shifted because then it would open up all this moisture transport to a broader area in the United States. We wouldn't focus it in one spot, but share the wealth a bit. But that's it. That has been the most dominant factor when you think about the spring forecasts that we've seen. So what are the models doing? Well, just have a look. This is the WPC, the Weather Prediction Center, out part of NOAA, and their predictions for rain for the next week. And what are they doing? I mean, we're just leaving this corridor out and that corridor out. And in the middle, it's super wet, and we got systems coming into the northwest. So that's just the way this whole pattern's shaking down right now. In fact, it's not just the next week, the next 2 weeks looks like that. It may not be until the month of May that I start to see reasonable chances of near normal precipitation in the southeast and possibly the same for the western plains. And meanwhile, we're going to be waiting on windows to open up in this area because of how tight things have been on precip. Now, since we're talking about this near term, I do need to let you know today I am concerned about the risk of severe storms in Minnesota, northern Iowa, into Wisconsin, and also down here around the Red River, the south. Tomorrow, it's kind of Iowa, eastern Iowa, Wisconsin, Illinois, but this whole area, there's a dry line here and a warm front there, and this system is just moving in that direction. So it's going to take it, the severe risk along with it, excuse me. And then you've got this. This would be day 3. So this is Wednesday. So 3 days. We skip a day on Thursday, and then Friday opens back up again. So a lot's going on as that flow comes around the Bermuda High. If you want to see it, this is kind of interesting. This is going through the day today into this evening. Major blowup of storms in this area. Got to be aware of this. And the problem is, you see how they're moving? They're kind of following one another. That's what's going to add to the snow melt plus the already saturated ground, giving us the risk of flooding here. Now, the HRRR model only runs out 36 hours. And so you will see tomorrow's severe weather risk setting up here by the evening into overnight hours. But it's clear that this thing's just getting fed by Gulf moisture, complements to that big Bermuda high. By the way, Dawson, I showed you the total precip. By the end of the week, I do need to make mention that the European model, look at this. This is Friday into Saturday and Sunday. Look at that. Out of South Dakota into Minnesota, Wisconsin. The models have been bouncing it all over the place, but they keep hinting at a chance for some snow back in the upper Midwest. And this is the wrong time. 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, okay, it'll melt. We melted the last big blizzard already, but this is now becoming problematic. You're not going to be able to get out there. You have to wait several days, and it's just already a sloppy mess. And so this is bad. Snow in late March, hey, thumbs up. Snow at this point, April, forget it. Don't want to see it. So I hope the model's going to miss it for this weekend and the system is in fact warmer. But look at that. This is the corridor over which we have the highest probability of going over 2 inches of liquid. And there's a major flood threat in this area, plus where the snow just melted back here. All right. Now, beyond that, look at the dry corners. Next 10 days, I mean, I've got nearly 100% chance that they don't pick up a ½ inch down in the southeast. Same thing in this part of the plain. So fire threat is up, drought continues to grow, and we're currently sitting at 79% of the country in some form of drought. So we have to ask what happens after we get through April, because April is just this persistent machine. The GFS over there on the right says that the month of April 17th to May 17th looks very similar to what we're dealing with right now. And it's even got that middle spot of the country just trending drier. European models like, yeah, no, I think we're going to break this down. We're going to get more of that INSO or that El Nino flavor to it. And the El Nino flavor looks like this. Now, I got a lot of people in the country that would like make that happen. That's exactly what I want. And that's open windows in parts of the Corn Belt, rains that can revive the drought problems in the plains and in the southeast. And it's been cool and wet in the northwest, so they're not going to mind a drier signal, even though they're going to worry about their reservoirs from the early melting of the snow they saw this year. But that's my analog package when I look at the big El Nino events that grew. And 2023 is in the mix there too, Dawson. You got to be able to see that one. Now, real quick, temperatures. Frost risk is in gray, but I want to remind you that after April 13th, which is here, this is the April 6th map I showed last week. Here's the April 13th. We still have a lot of area that typically gets their last frost, after now. And just to show you these temperatures, watch this heat wave erupt in the southeast. Here's today. Tomorrow, I mean, you're 84, I'm 83, St. Louis is 89. Watch over by DC, 92. That's Wednesday. Thursday, 90 stretch up to New Jersey. I mean, that's midsummer type heat. And that risk of snow I mentioned, look in the upper Midwest on Friday into Saturday. It will be cold enough in the overnight to give them some snow. Now, we cool down for the weekend in the midsection of the country while the heat stays east. But watch the temperature progression. Today, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. There's the cold air coming in. Saturday, Sunday. See it? Then we warm back up quick. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Warms back up. But this is what we tend to see the models doing around the 24th, 25th, 26th, 27th. And some of the newer longer range forecasts, which just came out from the CPC, said, hey, watch out for the last part of April, beginning of May, cooler here. And it's even showing up in some of the other models. So I don't think we're done yet with this frost risk problem. And it's just a reminder that you get into the upper Midwest, typical last frosts are the first week of May, and also here in the Great Lakes states. So it's not uncommon. It's just something we don't want to see after how we got this taste of warmth in the month of March. So that's what I'm thinking about in the near term.
Definitely something to keep in mind as producers are in full swing of getting things planted here for this spring. One more thing you wanted to mention, though, for this week's talk, of course,
Yeah.
you're talking about all this Gulf moisture. Packing a punch, though, of course, was always looking at, the hurricane season. Got some estimates for the upcoming season. What do we got there? Are we kind of, expecting above average or below average activity down in the Gulf this year?
Well, El Nino events tend to increase wind shear across the Atlantic. So the El Nino's in the Pacific, but it affects the heat momentum transfer across the rest of the world. So it tends to give us a little too much shear in the Atlantic, and hurricanes hate wind shear. And so one group has already released publicly their forecast for the 2026 hurricane season. And in all objective categories here, from the number of named storms to hurricane days to total accumulated cyclone energy, you can split it right here. This is average on the right, and this is what they're projecting on the left. So it's a reminder that El Ninos don't mean no hurricanes. They just tend to suppress the environment. You can still get big ones coming through. But if you look at my analogs for July to September, they're drier in this area. And the longer range models are drier in this area, which would suggest this could be a season that is less active. Now, I say less active, it only takes one. And you know that, everybody knows that. So I just wanted to point that out because it's a new bit of information. And it's funny just to leapfrog over the rest of spring and most of summer and say, hey, let's just see what's going on in the fall. When at the very beginning of this video, I told you how terrible we are at all that long range stuff before we get through the spring forecast barrier.
Yeah, hard to forget Hurricane Beryl that just like swept up straight north into even the I states, bringing a
Yeah.
lot of Gulf moisture. So yeah, definitely something to keep an eye on as we move here forward, and of course, going to keep identifying, that transition of when these longer term forecasts kind of get a little bit more, I don't want to say predictable, but having a better idea of an understanding of what could be on the horizon for things moving forward. But I think we'll end it right there, and always appreciate your insights, Eric, and we'll talk next time.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks.